Now we see this, hear this, receive and maintain this. Now, our practice nurtures us to be this now that we are, that is our life. Joko simplifies it in her way of saying, notice emotion, thought, be experiencing. Really, no need to say that. She could simply say experiencing. But unfortunately, when emotion, thought arises, it doesn't simply arise and pass much of the time for us, but it becomes something we play with, entangle with, enjoy, hate, build upon, and in a sense get blocked up by. The Buddha similarly says, when seeing, see, when hearing, hear, when cognizing, cognize. Just don't get stuck, doesn't use that word, but in the therefore, thereby, because of, therein, all the, what we could call emotion, thought, that of themselves are no big deal, except we, for various reasons, build on them our stories, which, I'll say, blocks up our life, entangles our life into those stories, as opposed to seeing, hearing, simply being this experiencing right now. Dogen Zenji has a fascicle called Zazen Shin, which is translated sometimes as needle of Zazen, or acupuncture needle of seated meditation. And actually, it's a commentary of an earlier teacher in China, Hongxi, who wrote a long, I shouldn't say long, half-page in English translation, poem titled The Acupuncture Needle of Zazen. And Dogen's Zazen Shin starts out with a long commentary or introduction to it, and then quoted Hongxi's version, and then wrote his own version that builds on it. But the title itself is of great value because it tells us what Zazen is, what practice is. It's an acupuncture needle that enables us, when correctly applied, enables us to free up the flow of our life. That is, noticing the emotion thought or the self-centered emotion thought that's blocking up this moment experiencing, blocking up, if I say it, the sound and forms of life of this moment, keeping us from manifesting, from being the life we are, with stories of various sorts. Stories of various sorts. Even so-called, what should I say, virtuous or good ones. So one example, Dogen just cites this, not in passing, but with just a little phrase. He says, let me see, that the Zazen Shin, the acupuncture needle, allows us not to slander, even slander Buddhas and ancestors. And he's referring to, some of you might be aware of the case of Joshu being asked, what's the nature of awakening? And Joshu saying, the cypress tree in the garden. Now, one day, Guangxi, who was a student of Joshu, went to Fayen. Fayen was another Chan master at that time who asked him, where are you coming from? And he said, Joshu. And Fayen said, I hear Joshu has a saying about a cypress tree, right? And he said, no. And Fayen said, everyone says that. When a monk asked about the intention of Bodhidharma's coming from the west, Joshu said, the cypress tree in the front garden. How can you, a senior student of his, say no? And the student said, my former master really had no such words. Please don't slander my former master. Please don't get entangled in stories about, don't get blocked up with this idea that there's these things about that we hold on to. Even so-called good sayings are not good. Even saying notice emotion thought locks us up into not being right where we are. It's this experiencing that Zazen is, this experiencing right here, which is why it's vital for us to notice how and when we are entangling in something. That's the noticing emotion thought. Not that there's any problem with emotion thought. It's just another form of cognizing, as the Buddha said. It's the therein, therefore, thereby that keeps us from being this functioning essence of who we are. This functioning essence, which is what the Buddha is revealing and encouraging us to attend to, or to do what's necessary to cease from running from it. Running from it in our stories, even our virtuous stories about Joshu's wonderful saying, or Joko's wonderful saying, or anyone else's. Dogen, when asked about seated meditation, he cites an earlier master, after giving instructions about how to sit upright and all the rest, what to do, simply think, not think. What is think, not thinking? It's non-thinking, non-thinking, non-thinking. As soon as we try to figure that out, we're in trouble. We're in trouble because our figuring out doesn't help us in this realm, doesn't help us in the least. So how do we, just as if Joko says experiencing, if we set up some guidelines, this is experiencing, that's not experiencing, this is the way to experience, I am better if I, etc., etc. There's no fixed way that we have to do this, since from the beginning this is who we are. This non-thinking is who we are. And yet we add our habits of attempting to do it. A Buddha attempting to become and make a Buddha. Can you make what you already are? What you've always been? And yet we could very easily build therefore, therein, thereby, grab on to emotion thoughts of all sorts and analyze them, figure out, oh, that was really good, oh, that was really bad, I didn't like that. And we find that happening in the midst of cognizing, arising, in the midst of seeing, hearing, thinking, arising. All senses. That's the simplest guidance that the Buddha gives. Joko puts it, it's important for us to notice it because of how much we're used to taking it for granted as the world that we live in. Therefore, I heard that, therefore it means thereby, it means therein, there, etc., etc. Because of that, he's my friend. Because of that, she's worse than. I'm going to get because of that. I'm going to lose because of that. And all the other words and ways we can phrase it, because we each have our own ways and habits of doing that. It's not a matter of a particular form. And yet it is a matter of the form of our life. The form of our life that, whether we say in Yao Shan's think not thinking or non-thinking, or Dogen's picking it up, if we create a form and then say, well, that's non-thinking, I got that, I'm doing that, already we again create the emotion, thought, I'm doing it well, I'm not doing it well. And yet we have to make our effort. And our effort is to notice how and where we're blocking up the flow of life, of this moment life. And we can say this is important in sitting, in Zazen, but it's important all the time, in all directions, for everyone, whether they do so-called practice or not. Because the entangling in emotion thought leads us to building all sorts of fears and angers, hurts, and much more. That's the whole point of the Buddha's teaching, to enable us to cease to harm and therefore cease to suffer. That's the opportunity of the Zazen acupuncture needle that is sitting upright. It enables us to be the flow of our life, if I use that kind of word. But the flow of our life is not moving, it's right here, this moment, still, moving, no different. When you're sitting still, you're sitting still. Of course there's movement. Not only your so-called acupuncture flowing, call it what you wish, veins and blood and nerves and heart and all the rest. But even when you're moving, walking, sitting, exchanging, eating, giving, receiving, this is all just this functioning of our life. And yet when we add on to that non-thinking, to that experiencing which doesn't require a single action on our part, not one single thing that we need to do to experience. I don't know anyone who you can say, well, I'm going to have more of experience if I drink this or eat this or really focus on that, or run around and build up my energy first. But experiencing is experiencing in whatever form it is, from the very beginning as a baby till just before we close our eyes and say, doesn't make a difference. It's not better experiencing, worse experiencing, except as soon as we say, oh, I'm experiencing real well. I have heightened experiencing when then, of course, there's attention and inattention, but experiencing is not created by you, just as non-thinking is not created by you, just as Zazen isn't created by us, and yet it is exactly our life. It is exactly the functioning, if I want to say it in such a way, or if we want to say it in such a way, It's exactly being the Buddhas that we are. Don't have to use the word Buddhas, though that's the, what should I say, the realm where we speak. But Buddha has, as an ancient master said, no fixed mark, no fixed way of being. So from morning to night, you only encounter Buddhas. Even when you look in the mirror, though you might not believe that either. Only encounter Buddhas. Could be Buddhas who don't realize they're Buddhas. Could be Buddhas that are attempting to kill Buddhas. But that's from the beginning to end. And it's up to us. It's up to us in our life and in our practice. So let me read you, since I mentioned it, a little bit the Zazen Shin acupuncture needle of Master Hongxi, and then I'll read the one that Dogen writes. This is not too long of a poem. Essential function of Buddha after Buddha, functioning essence of ancestor after ancestor, knowing without touching things, illuminating without facing objects, knowing without touching things, the knowing inherently subtle, illumining without facing objects, the illumining inherently mysterious, knowing inherently subtle, even without discriminatory thoughts, the illumining inherently mysterious, even without a hair's breadth of sign, ever without discriminating thought. The knowing is rare without peer, ever without a hair's breadth of sign. The illumining comprehends without grasping. The water is clear right through to the bottom. A fish goes lazily along. The sky is vast without horizon. A bird flies far, far away. Now Dogen adds to this his own version. I won't do them side by side, but this is Dogen's version. Essential function of Buddha after Buddha, functioning essence of ancestor after ancestor, present without thinking, completed without interacting, present without thinking. The present is inherently intimate, completed without interacting. The completion is inherently verified. The present inherently intimate, even without a stain or defilement. The completion inherently verified, even without upright or inclined. Intimacy, ever without stain or defilement. The intimacy sloughs off without discarding. Verification, ever without upright or inclined. The verification makes effort without figuring. The water is clear right through the earth. A fish goes along like a fish. The sky is vast straight into the heavens. A bird flies just like a bird. Sometime it might be interesting to look at the two of them side by side, line by line, but now's not the time for that. Thank you.